Jeff Miyasaka met Monica Wu on a blind date, but Monica admits it was the second date when Jeff found the way to her heart.
Made lobster risotto with lobsters he caught. So I was like, well, that's a winner.
For Jeff, it was Monica's ever-present smile that set her apart.
She had a really good smile, and I think it was also to her laugh.
So after Jeff earned his master's degree in business, he married Monica in her Hawaiian hometown. They bought their first home in California, and together they began building the picture-perfect life, traveling the world, and enjoying everything their California lifestyle had to offer.
I was a really outdoorsy person, going backpacking, so I used to go kayaking all the time.
But Jeff's favorite sport was fishing, and bringing home the fresh catch to Monica.
It works out well. I mean, both of us like to eat.
They played hard and they worked hard. Jeff had a great job in management at the Gallo Winery. Monica got a job there too, and it wasn't long before they were blessed with their first son, Ethan. They were three of a kind, embarking on new adventures together, celebrating birthdays at Disneyland.
It was a fun time, definitely.
Little did they know, the fun times were about to end for good.
It just seemed to go poof. It just blew up that day.
It was May 7, 2015. Jeff Miyasaka was driving to work on eastbound Highway 120 near Manteca when traffic slowed to a stop. But despite the stop traffic ahead and an overhead sign warning drivers to use caution, semi-truck driver Ghaus failed to slow down or even tap the brakes. Instead, he turned his 65,000-pound big rig into a deadly weapon, barreling into the vehicles in front of him at highway speed, crushing Sarah Garcia's car, killing her instantly, hitting another car as it tried to veer out of the way, then crashing into Jeff Miyasaka's 2000 Toyota Camry with over 1,600 tons of force. Jeff's head smashed into the steering wheel and shattered the windshield, lacerating his scalp, fracturing his skull at the left mastoid, sphenoid bone, bilateral canal, and right occipital bone, causing an epidural hematoma. He also suffered a contusion of his left shoulder, 4 fractured ribs, bilateral pulmonary contusions, thoracic spine fractures at T2, and a lumbar transverse fracture. After demolishing Jeff Miyasaka's Toyota, Ghaus hit the back of a semi-truck with enough force to propel it 70 feet. Crash scene photos show just how lucky Jeff was to be alive in the driver's seat. But inside what was left of the back end, in between the twisted, mangled metal, a crushed car seat, where 2-year-old Ethan would have been sitting had he not been homesick with his mother.
When you see the car seat and it's just pulled out of the base and it's just bent, and then I looked at the passenger seat and there was no headrest, I just realized very quickly that Ethan and I wouldn't have survived that accident.
Jeff was unconscious as paramedics rushed him to San Joaquin General Hospital, but it was not equipped to handle Jeff's severe brain injury. So he was airlifted to Sutter Memorial in Modesto, where Jeff underwent an immediate craniotomy to control the bleeding in his brain. A neck and back brace held his broken body together.
And when you walk through that doorway and you see someone that you know, I gotta stop. Because I'm gonna lose it.
Monica is still haunted by the memory of Jeff in the ICU.
But you just don't realize until you see your husband laying there that the reality really hits.
Jeff was so badly beat up, his own son didn't recognize him.
It literally broke my heart to watch our son not want to have anything to do with him. And just 2 weeks ago, literally ran up to Jeff into his arms. It was an image like you can't, I just can't get rid of it.
After 2 weeks in the hospital and rehab, Jeff returned home, still in a neck and back brace.
It was hard to turn, hard to sleep.
He had to rely on Monica for just about everything.
The dressing, the bathing, taking him to the restroom.
3.5 months later, Jeff finally got his braces off, but it was only the beginning.
I was still having vision problems. I was still having some hearing problems through some of it. I was still having some chewing problems, and then also I have this shoulder pain, some back pain.
Jeff sought help from orthopedic surgeon Dr. Noah Weiss, who determined Jeff needed surgery to repair a torn rotator cuff and damaged clavicle.
One component of his procedure was to insert what is essentially a little high-speed burr and to remove several millimeters of bone under this thing called the acromion so that there was no longer any rubbing. The other thing we did is we removed a few millimeters of bone from the end of his collarbone or clavicle.
The surgery gave Jeff a little relief from his pain, but mentally he was being tortured by frustration and anger.
Like I get upset or get really, the temper comes out loud.
The easygoing, kind, compassionate husband and father was gone.
This is not the man I met. This is not the guy I married.
And just as Monica was starting to realize just how much her husband had changed for the worse,
He just flies off the handle, and it could be, I can't even tell you what it is that triggers it.
she learned she was pregnant with their second child.
And I just was like, this couldn't be the worst time for me to be pregnant.
Monica's pregnancy was plagued with problems, but she had to face them on her own.
It was a very lonely 9 months. I mean, he just wasn't there. He wasn't excited.
She missed so much work caring for Jeff and her unborn child. Monica lost her job, making her feel even more depressed. But Jeff was too disconnected to care.
I hit rock bottom. I went through probably about 6 months in. I was so deep into it. I was so depressed, and Jeff didn't even notice.
So although they smiled for the camera when Andrew was born, in Monica's heart, she knew their family was falling apart.
After I had Andrew, I looked at him and I said, I don't want to have any more children with you.
Neuropsychologist Dr. Edgar Angeloni has been treating Jeff Miyasaka. He says Jeff is suffering from a severe traumatic brain injury and post-concussive syndrome, which are causing a number of cognitive issues.
That's the planning, execution, initiation, ability to problem solve, and abstract thinking.
And Dr. Angeloni says Jeff's orbital frontal and ventromedial prefrontal brain damage is having a devastating impact on his personality.
So we have the orbital frontal as well as the ventral, which produce these intrinsic personality changes, irritability, difficulty modulating his behavior, inability to modulate his anger outburst. So that's the other aspect. Then we have the memory issues. He has difficulty retrieving information, which is something that we typically see in those individuals. So he's able to acquire the information, but when he needs to utilize that information, he cannot find it in his brain because the fibers from the frontal lobe trying to reach for that information are damaged.
Dr. Angeloni says adding to Jeff's frustration are daily severe headaches, sleepless nights, and decreased sex drive.
He's using all his resources in order to survive, basically. So when it gets to the end of the day, that's the last thing is on his plate.
Dr. Angeloni says it's no wonder Jeff's relationship with his wife and kids is suffering.
The structure of the life that they had is collapsing. And that compassion and that empathy, it's just not going to be enough.
And Jeff's job performance has been adversely affected too.
So he tries to compensate for his memory difficulties, he tries to compensate for his fatigue, he tries to compensate for his sleeping problems, for the pain that he's experienced. All those areas he's trying to compensate in order to be able to perform at the same level. But it doesn't work. It takes a toll. He will not be able to complete the work at the same time, and he talks about that. It takes much longer for him to even scratch the surface of his work. He's been in the company for some time, so they have been very compassionate to him. But what happened is, because of the repair process that he's going through, the level of trauma that he has gone through, and the amount of cognitive reserves that it takes for him to be able to perform an MBA type of work, he gets home and he's exhausted. He's not able to interact with his kids. He's not even interacting with his wife. And at some point or another, things start falling apart.
Dr. Angeloni says Jeff's condition is complicated by the fact that he has anosognosia, meaning he's unaware of the extent of his injury.
Then he is kind of lost emotionally. He doesn't understand why his wife is like this now. He doesn't understand what's wrong with not interacting with the kids, or being upset because they are acting out, or he doesn't understand why perhaps he's not performing at the same level that he was before.
Unfortunately, Dr. Angeloni says, Jeff's condition could get worse. He has numerous post-traumatic brain bleeds, making him at risk for developing post-traumatic hydrocephalus, which means Jeff will need to be closely watched by a neurologist in the years to come.
15, 20 years down the road, like what am I going to be dealing with?
And despite shoulder surgery and physical therapy, Jeff still has a lot of pain and has given up the activities he loved. His backpack is stuffed on a shelf.
Backpacking is just the ability to put 50 pounds on your back is gone.
His kayak sits idle, his fishing bait untouched, and his rock climbing gear packed away.
You lose a lot of the things that defined who I was just a few years ago.
But the worst part for Jeff is he lost his ability to connect with his little boys. Ever since the crash, they are too loud, too active, too much.
Sometimes, again, if they're yelling or screaming or crying, it's just, okay, so? And then other times, too, where it's like, just, shut up, be quiet, go up to your room.
But he knows Monica is getting the brunt of it.
It's always, again, it's a little bit too late by the time I realize, like, oh, I went overboard. By then it's already been done, it's been 15 minutes, and, kids are off crying, or she's upstairs, mad at me.
Because he feels like a failure as a husband and a father, Jeff is even more determined to conquer his cognitive issues at work.
Now I find out that if I don't write it down or use the Outlook calendar, I won't do it. So, again, people come and say, like, hey, you said you were going to do this. Oh, I did? Oops, I forgot. Let me go back and do it now.
As a result, Jeff is bringing even more work home, further isolating him from his family. Jeff feels like a spectator watching the life he used to have play out in front of him. And while truck driver Ghaus is facing criminal charges for the fatal crash, it's Jeff who is serving a life sentence, a prisoner of the severe brain injury that stole his happiness, ruined his marriage.
It wasn't supposed to be this way.
And could take the only thing he has left, his kids.
I've lost a lot of the will to enjoy other things, and basically everything that I have now is that I do is, for the kids and all that. I mean, that's everything I'm like, for the kids and Monica, it's like everything that I have to basically live. The way that I basically looked out of the accident was the glass like half full, right? Because I looked back at the girl behind me died. I mean, that could have been me. But to be fortunate enough to survive it was certainly, to go through and go like, okay, I survived it. You get that second shot. It was huge, but I think in some senses I don't appreciate it. And to go back and go like, okay, you've got a second shot. You have a chance to go back and reshape your life. And I think that's one struggle. Like, I really haven't.
Because Jeff's new life is an empty one, and now there's no way to fill it.
The drive is gone to go back and really experience new things and live new things, and I don't know why.